Hello and welcome to Power Automate Basics. This lab is all around cloud flows. We're going to cover, it's a very basic cloud flow we're going to create, but we're going to cover a lot of stuff. We're going to cover different types of triggers, different types of actions, the anatomy of a cloud flow, and you'll get a lot from this hopefully. So let's get into it. So in this lab, we're going to be, the lab we're going to actually do is document number 6 from the materials, from the downloaded zip file. This is the zip file you should have downloaded. You should have access to these files here. We are going to use something from this lab data packages folder, and it's lab number 6 is the one that we're going to be doing. This one, you can do it yourself, definitely, and have a look around, but I highly recommend following along with this one because I'm going to explain a lot of context around the cloud flows. You really do need to have the prior labs completed, and ideally you want to have that gateway working between cloud and desktop. So make sure that all the prior labs are completed, and also just make sure that you've logged into Outlook. So you should have set up a trial tenant. If you go to outlook.office.com, make sure you're logged in as your trial tenant user, and then go to office.outlook.com and make sure that your mailbox is available like this, because we will be using Outlook. So just make sure that you can log in and that you can get that. So if that's all good and you are ready to go with that, then we are ready. So what I'm going to talk about in this lab is I'm going to talk about cloud flows, and let's just have a look at the different types of flows. Let's start with looking at different types of flows. So we're going to go to My Flows and New Flow, and let's talk through these options here. First of all, there is Start from a Template. So there are heaps of templates available on Power Automate. Templates that can do lots and lots of things. Feel free to browse these. They're a good way of getting started. So templates are there for you to look at. And cloud flows start from a template means that when you go start from a template, you will see all of these options here for you to choose from to start creating that flow. The other thing to mention here is connectors. Connectors are a central part of cloud flows. Over 500 connectors now are available on here. If you are on this page yourself, have a look for some of the apps that you might use. And it's always interesting for me to look through some of these and what they are. You'll notice that there are some of these that are independent publisher connectors. This is really exciting because prior to this program being released, which was about July 2021, the connectors relied on the vendor to create those connectors. So there's a Google Drive connector. That meant that Google had to create that Google Drive connector. But with the independent publisher program, what that means is that anybody can create a connector for any particular application. So here you've got AccuWeather, Airtable, Clearbit, Carbon, ClickUp, all of these different apps. But like Airtable hasn't created a connector. Someone else has created a connector for Airtable, and they've submitted it to Microsoft, and Microsoft have vetted it, and they've released it to the community. So these connectors are just going to grow and grow and grow, and they are central to Power Automate Cloud Flows. In a connector, you have a couple of things in a connector. So let's look at let's say the Microsoft To Do. Maybe it's all one word. Or hyphen maybe. There it is, Microsoft To Do. So a connector has two things. It has triggers and actions. Triggers are something that can start a flow. So here you've got Microsoft To Do. This is the connector for To Do. You've got more documentation here, but here's an overview. You can do these. You can start an automation when a new To Do is created in a specific folder, or when a To Do is updated in a specific folder. And what that will do is that will start a flow. That will trigger a flow. So these are triggers. And then you've got actions. Within that flow, you've got actions. So here you've got create a to-do task. That is it. So create a task is an action of the to-do connector. There'll be update task and things like that. So you've got this concept of triggers and actions. And indeed, in a flow, in a cloud flow, you'll have a trigger that starts the flow. You'll have actions within that flow, and then you have a third component which is sort of control functions like conditional statements or loops. So you've got these three components: the trigger, the action, and this conditional controls that make up cloud flows. And we'll see all of those as we go through the rest of the training. So let's go into and have a look at so that's start from a template. I'll walk through some of the templates. Other things to start from. You can start from a Visio template. So if you use Microsoft Visio, there is a plugin you can get for Visio, Power Automate plugin, and the diagram elements within a Visio diagram. The elements that the different squares in a Visio template, you can connect those to a connector, and you can say this box here relates to Outlook, this box here relates to Teams, this box here relates to AI Builder, and then with one click you can publish the skeleton flow, and then just hook in all the different components in the web, in Flow on the web. So that's Visio. Quite a neat little tool, neat little trick. You've then got these other ones. So automated cloud flow is where it starts from a trigger. So we saw the triggers that are available in connectors. That's automated cloud flow, starts from one of those triggers. We then have instant cloud flow. Let's have a look at instant cloud flow. These are quite interesting. So I can't move it. Instant cloud flow. So automated cloud flows rely on the connectors to do the work. So the connector would start the trigger. It's automated cloud flow. Instant cloud flow relies on the action of a human. A human needs to do something to initiate that flow. So manually trigger a flow. This is a flow button, or they go into this interface and execute, start the flow manually. You've also got things like from within Power Apps. So Power App, you press a button in Power Apps, it could then start this flow. In Power BI, click a button in Power BI for a selected file in OneDrive. And the interesting thing around things that are related to things like Teams, a selected message in Teams, or a selected file in SharePoint, or a selected file in OneDrive for Business, what's really cool about those is that, say I was to use for a selected file in OneDrive for Business, then anyone that has access to this flow, when they go to OneDrive for Business, there is a button for Power Automate, and they can see that particular flow. That flow will be surfaced inside OneDrive for Business. Similarly, if it's related to SharePoint, it will surface in SharePoint. So it follows the user around for that particular manual action. Not only that, when I choose for selected file OneDrive for Business, all of the data for that file will be available in the flow that we create. So it's a pretty neat feature that the build an instant flow. It surfaces where the user is. Then you have scheduled cloud flow. So this means it runs on a particular rhythm, maybe every 5 minutes, every day, the last day of the month, a particular rhythm. And then desktop flow we have covered in prior labs. And then business process flow is not part of this training. It is part of Power Apps, and you can go and check that out in the Power Apps course on this platform. So they're the different types of flow that you can create. Let us go ahead and create one. We're going to create an automated cloud flow. And similar to how we, in fact, here's all the different triggers that you can see here's all the different triggers you can see. So we're going to create one called Outlook to Outlook invoice, Outlook to desktop invoice processing. Let's call it that. So Outlook to desktop invoice processing. And here's all the different triggers you can have. So feel free to search for apps that you might know or use in there. We're going to look for Outlook. Now notice that there are a number of actions for Outlook. So when an email is flagged, when an email arrives, and you notice actually there's two types of connector here. There is Outlook.com, which is the consumer version, and there is Outlook Office 365, which is the one that we're going to use because your tenant that we signed up for as part of this this training is a Outlook Office 365 Outlook. And we're going to use when a new email arrives for Office 365 Outlook. So make sure you've chosen that one and then click on Create. And it will do two things. It will create the flow, and you'll notice there that it's signed in and created that connection. It created the connection for us without us having to do anything. It's created that connection to Outlook. Now it's created the connection as the logged in user. So it's going to create that connection for whichever tenant and user you created. And if you click on this drop down here, you could, if you want, change that connection to be a different user if you so wanted. But we're going to leave it as is, just for the training purposes. So when a new email arrives, we want something to happen. Now let's look at the advanced options here. Now, in these advanced options, everything on this screen here, except for one option, every option except for one, is a filter. So this is saying when a new email arrives into the mailbox, then this email will fire. So if we leave it like this, every email will fire. Every email will fire this trigger. But if we want it for just particular people in the to, CC, or from fields, then you can put those email addresses in here. If we want a particular filter, now we do want that, so we're going to type in here new invoice. So go ahead and type new invoice. So this means that only when an email arrives in this mailbox with the subject filter of new invoice will this trigger fire. This is not case sensitive, and it is so it can say something like my new invoice and it will fire, or new invoice for you and it will fire. It's just going to have those two words in it. I'm not sure about new purchase invoice. I'm not sure whether that would work, but do feel free to test that out if you'd like to. And again, like only with attachments or importance, these are filters as well. The one that's not a filter is this one here, this include attachments. What include attachments does is by default, when this email, so the email comes in, it's got new invoice in the title, it will trigger this flow. It will take a copy of all the metadata for that email and make it available to the flow, and you'll see that in a second. And it will take a copy of that, and to save space, it won't include the attachments. So any attachments on that email will not be brought over when the email fires, when the trigger fires. Now in this workflow we're building out today, we do want the attachments. So we're going to click on yes here. So it should look something like that. Once you've got something like that, then click on new step. And all we're going to do here is we're going to initiate our desktop flow again. Click on desktop flow, run a flow built with Power Automate for desktop. And you'll see here, you'll enter an invoice, run mode, attended. And then the account just put any old junk in here. But what I do want to point your attention to before you do that is just note what's happened here. You can see this box has appeared on the right hand side here. So this trigger is when a new email arrives, and I mentioned that the data is copied over so it's available to us. So the email that triggered this workflow, triggered this flow, the data from that email is available to us. And that's what this is here. It's called dynamic content. So this is the trigger. The name here is when a new email arrives. You'll see the title here, when a new email arrives. This is all the data that is generated from that trigger. Now, if the trigger was a SharePoint list, you'd have all of the fields from that SharePoint list. If it was a OneDrive document, you'd have the document properties and document content. So this is dynamic based on the preceding triggers or steps. Trigger or steps. You can only have one trigger in a flow. So anyway, we're going to go in here and just type in any old thing for the account. And click save. Okay. Click on save, and then we're going to test it. Now to test it, so this is now ready to go and test, right? So what we're going to do to test it is we're just going to go back to this summary screen. We didn't talk about this summary screen before. Let's just talk a little bit about this screen. This screen here has got some details here of the flow. You can edit it here. You can just put more of a description in here if you need to. Oops, what's going on there? Some description. So if you need to really describe what this is doing, you can put it in there. All the different details of its status and all of that good stuff. All the connections that it uses are listed here. The owners are listed here, or any owners, collaborators are listed here as well. You can add more people in here if you want to, add more people to work with this flow. And here you've got the run history. So we're actually going to watch this run history when we test it. So to test it, we're going to send ourselves an email. This is turned on at the moment, so it's ready to go. So open up your email account from your test tenant. Make sure it's your test tenant. Click on new message, and you're going to send it to yourself. So whatever your email address is on your test tenant that you've created, just use that. And it's going to be new invoice in the title. And we're going to attach the invoice here just for complete purposes, although it has no bearing on the flow at this point, but we're going to attach it anyway. Click on attach, browse this computer, and where we're going to go is you're going to go into your Futurability Labs folder, which you've extracted from that zip file. I'm going to go to Lab Data Packages and Lab 6, 7, 8, 10 email attachment to use, and then choose that. And that's the invoice we're going to use. So here is the example invoice that we're going to be using throughout the rest of the work. So we're going to send that. And now what's happening is the flow is waiting and watching. Now we click on this little icon here for refresh, and that will show when the flow runs. So it can take a while to fire, a couple of seconds. And there it is. You can see that the flow has started. Now, of course, what's going to happen with this flow is it's going to take over my user interface. It's going to log, it's going to go through Contoso invoicing again. So check that out when that happens. I'm going to just minimize here so I don't interfere with that bot. But you can see that the Outlook trigger worked there. And now we're calling the action of the Power Automate desktop connector, which is going to do its stuff on the desktop. And it's going to pass that data in that was input. You can see there, so Simpsons, Homer, that's the data that we included. Click on save, and that's the end of the flow. So go back to the run, and you can see here now that will have completed eventually. Succeeded. And what you can do is you can go into here and you can see what happened to that flow in on a case-by-case basis. So you can go into the flow and see what happened. So here's what was put in. Here's the output. It's too big to show in here, so you can download. It's just JSON basically, JSON codes. This is quite codey. This is the connection it used. The other thing while we're looking at this is we can go to monitor and you can see the Cloudflow activity here. It can take a while for it to show up, so that's why it's not showing there. Desktop flow runs, these should be pretty instant. Yep, there we go, you can see those there. This should show up in a second. Yeah, it'll show up in a second. The other thing is machines are shown here as well, so you can see our machine registered here. So in monitor is where you can see those all the activity of your cloud, desktop, and the machines that are registered here. Under data, if you look at connections, this is where you can see all of the connections that are created for all the different flows and apps that are in that environment, and this is where they're shown here. So you can see these are the two that we've created in our flows at the moment, but this is where it would be a list of all the different connections that are created for this environment. So that's a walkthrough of cloud flows. Hopefully that clears a few things up. And of course, if you're stuck with anything, we've got a support bubble in the bottom right hand corner. Feel free to connect with us on that support. And thank you for sticking with us through this lab, and we'll see you in the next one.